The Galactic Council, an alliance of the most advanced alien civilizations, sat in the grand chamber of the stellar nexus. Holographic projections of their leaders floated above polished obsidian tables. Their forms an array of bioluminescent tendrils, shimmering scales, and angular exoskeletons. They had overseen the balance of interstellar power for centuries, ensuring no single species dominated the cosmos. But now one planet, Earth, threatened to upend that equilibrium. Despite being newcomers to the galactic stage, humans had proven alarmingly adept at adapting and innovating. Their technology, once considered primitive, had leaped forward at an unprecedented rate. Trade routes flourished, Earth's colonies spread, and their representatives displayed a disconcerting knack for turning even skeptics into allies. Whispers of humanity's potential as a galactic superpower sent ripples of unease through the council. Humans are unpredictable, hissed Srath, a serpentine delegate whose emerald scales glimmered faintly. They wield chaos as a weapon. If we wait, they will become unstoppable. Others in the chamber murmured agreement. To them, Earth's ambition was an infection that needed excision. The debate, however, was brief. The council had long relied on a solution for situations too delicate for open conflict. A unanimous vote sealed Earth's fate. The Shadow Claws would be dispatched. The Shadow Claws were the stuff of nightmares, a clandestine guild of assassins drawn from the deadliest species in the galaxy. Their loyalty was not to ideals or politics, but to contracts. Each operative was a master of their craft, trained to dismantle civilizations from within. When they moved, governments fell, and the memories of their victims faded like whispers in a storm. Their leader, Karn, was a name spoken in hushed tones, a legend of carnage and cunning. It began with sabotage. Earth's leading scientist was found dead, his lab reduced to a smoldering ruin. Next came the mysterious disappearance of a key diplomat en route to a crucial peace summit. Panic rippled through Earth's leadership as chaos erupted at every level. It didn't take long for the truth to surface. Earth was under siege by an enemy it couldn't see. But humanity had its own legends. The briefing room deep within Earth's central command buzzed with activity. Military advisors and intelligence officers pored over reports, their faces grim. The images were clear. Alien operatives had infiltrated Earth's defenses with surgical precision. The room fell silent as General Marcus Steele, a towering figure with a battle-hardened demeanor, entered. "This is no ordinary threat," Steele said, his voice carrying the weight of unspoken losses. "The Shadow Claws are unlike anything we've faced before. We need someone who operates outside conventional warfare, someone they won't expect." The suggestion hung in the air for a moment before a younger officer hesitantly spoke. "There's one man who might stand a chance." Eyes turned toward him, skepticism evident. The officer hesitated before continuing, his voice barely above a whisper. Johnny Walker. The name sent a ripple through the room. Everyone had heard the stories of a man who could take down an army single-handedly, whose precision and determination bordered on supernatural. But Johnny Walker was a ghost, a man who had vanished from the world stage after his personal crusade against the criminal underworld. Steele nodded. "Find him." The cabin was secluded, nestled deep within a forest where time seemed to pause. A single light flickered in the window, casting long shadows across the snow-dappled ground. Inside, Johnny Walker sat at a worn wooden table, his gaze fixed on a simple photograph. It showed a younger man, a woman with a radiant smile, and a dog resting at their feet. The knock at the door was firm but hesitant. Walker's sharp eyes flicked toward it, his hand instinctively moving toward the pistol hidden beneath the table. When he opened the door, he found Steele standing there, flanked by two nervous-looking officers. "Johnny Walker," Steele began, his tone respectful but direct. "We need your help." Walker's silence was answer enough, but Steele pressed on. "This isn't about a vendetta or a contract. It's about humanity's survival. The Galactic Council has sent assassins to destroy us. They've already begun." For a moment, Walker said nothing. The weight of the words settled in the air, but his expression remained unreadable. Finally, he stepped aside, letting them in. The briefing was quick and brutal. As Steele explained the Shadow Claw's methods and their attacks on Earth, Walker listened intently, his mind already dissecting the information. He asked few questions, but each one revealed his focus. Weaknesses, patterns, and the limits of the enemy's capabilities. "You want me to hunt them?" Walker said finally, his tone flat but with a hint of menace. Steele nodded. "You're the only one who can." Walker stood, his presence filling the room like a storm on the horizon. "If I do this, I do it my way. No interference." "Agreed," Steele said, relief evident. As the officers prepared to leave, one of them hesitated, glancing back at Walker. "Sir," he ventured, "do you think you can take them on? These assassins, they're not human." Walker's gaze met his, cold and unyielding. "They're not the first." Back at the stellar nexus, Karn stood in his private chamber, gazing out at the endless expanse of stars. Reports of initial success filled his datapad, but something nagged at him. Humans, he knew, were tenacious creatures, capable of unexpected brilliance under pressure. They were survivors. A subordinate entered, bowing low. "Commander, we've encountered resistance. One of our teams was neutralized on Earth. It appears they have a specialist." Karn's lips curled into a predatory smile. "Interesting. Let them try. It will make their defeat all the more satisfying." The game had begun. The assassins were hunters, but Johnny Walker was no prey. For every move the Shadow Claws made, Walker was there, turning their precision against them. As humanity watched from the shadows, one thing became clear. The Baba Yaga had returned, and this time he wasn't fighting for revenge. He was fighting for survival. The metallic hum of the dropship's engines was the only sound as Johnny Walker sat in the hold, silently assembling a weapon that was both familiar and alien. The human engineering team had worked tirelessly to adapt their technology to combat the Shadow Claws, creating hybrid firearms that could pierce alien armor and disrupt energy shields. Walker handled the weapon with mechanical precision, his mind focused on the mission ahead. Across from him, Lieutenant Adrian Cole observed the assassin with a mix of awe and trepidation. Cole had been assigned as Walker's handler, though the term felt woefully inaccurate. The man sitting before him needed no guidance, no orders. He was a force unto himself. "First target's a Shadow Claw outpost," Cole said, breaking the silence. "Intel indicates they're planning another strike in the Alpha Colony sector." Walker didn't look up. "What's the layout?" Cole hesitated, unnerved by Walker's calm intensity. "Sparse defenses, but that's relative. Their operatives don't rely on numbers. Expect traps, cloaking tech, and a lot of ways to die." Walker nodded, his hands never pausing. When the dropship jolted as it entered the planet's atmosphere, he finally spoke. "Stay on the ship. I'll handle it." Before Cole could protest, Walker was gone, descending the ramp into the darkness below. The Shadow Claw outpost was nestled in the jagged canyons of a barren world. Its structure's a blend of sleek alien design and jagged natural formations. Walker moved like a wraith, his steps silent, his silhouette blending into the shadows. He had studied the reports, learned the patterns, and anticipated their defenses. The first guard never saw him coming. Walker's blade, a razor-thin alloy forged for cutting through alien exoskeletons, slid silently through the creature's neck. The body crumpled without a sound. Walker dragged it into the shadows and continued, his movements efficient and deliberate. Inside the outpost, the Shadow Claws were eerily silent. Their species communicated largely through pheromones and subtle gestures, making them nearly impossible to eavesdrop on. Walker relied instead on instinct and observation, noting the faint shimmer of cloaked sentries and the hum of hidden energy traps. It wasn't long before they noticed him. The first attack came from above, a Shadow Claw dropping from the ceiling with a blade aimed at his spine. Walker spun, his firearm already in hand, and fired a single shot. The alien crumpled midair, its body hitting the floor with a dull thud. The sound brought others. The battle that followed was a blur of motion and violence. Walker danced through the narrow corridors, his every movement a calculated step in a deadly symphony. He used his environment to his advantage, vaulting over obstacles, redirecting energy blasts, and turning the Shadow Claw's superior numbers into a liability. By the time the final alien fell, the outpost was a smoldering ruin. Walker stood in the center, his breath steady, his weapon held loosely at his side. He scanned the carnage, ensuring no threats remained, then retrieved a small data core from the central console. Back on the dropship, Cole stared at him in disbelief. How did you take them all out? Walker didn't answer. He handed Cole the data core and sat down, already cleaning his weapon. The information recovered from the outpost painted a grim picture. The Shadow Claws were not operating alone. The Galactic Council was providing them with resources and strategic support. Their next target was Earth's lunar defense grid, a critical barrier protecting the planet from orbital strikes. You'll never make it in time, Cole said, his voice tense as he studied the data. I don't need time, Walker replied, his tone icy. I need a ship. Hours later, Walker infiltrated the lunar facility ahead of the Shadow Claws. The base was eerily quiet, its personnel evacuated after the threat had been identified. Walker moved through the empty halls, planting traps and calibrating the automated defenses. When the Shadow Claws arrived, they found a fortress prepared for them. Explosions rocked the facility as Walker's traps activated, taking out the first wave. The surviving assassins adapted quickly, their cloaking technology allowing them to evade detection. But Walker was ready. He lured them into the facility's central control room, where he had disabled the gravity. The ensuing battle was chaos. Walker used his understanding of physics and momentum to outmaneuver the aliens, firing precise shots while dodging their attacks. The Shadow Claws, for all their prowess, were unprepared for the sheer unpredictability of their opponent. By the end of the skirmish, Walker stood alone, blood dripping from a gash on his arm. He activated the facility's defenses, ensuring Earth's safety, then transmitted a warning to the Galactic Council. I'm coming for you, the message read. Back at the stellar nexus, Karn watched the transmission with narrowed eyes. So, the humans have a monster of their own, he said, his voice low and venomous. Let him come. We will show him the meaning of fear. Walker, aboard his commandeered ship, prepared for the next phase. His mission was no longer about defense. He would take the fight to the Shadow Claws, dismantling their operations piece by piece. He had become more than a man. He was a reckoning, and he would not stop until the threat to humanity was erased. As the stars stretched before him, Walker's focus sharpened. The galaxy thought it had seen war, but it had never faced the Baba Yaga. The silence of the void was absolute, broken only by the faint hum of the commandeered alien vessel systems. Johnny Walker sat in the cockpit, his gaze fixed on the star-strewn expanse ahead. In his hands, he turned over a blade, a sleek, alien alloy that shimmered with a faint blue glow. It had belonged to one of the Shadow Claws he had killed on the lunar base, a reminder of the enemy's strength and the precision required to defeat them. Ahead loomed the Shadow Claw's central base, a massive space station hidden within the folds of a collapsing nebula. Its jagged architecture seemed to defy geometry, bristling with defensive turrets and cloaked in layers of energy fields. Walker's approach was slow and methodical, his stolen ship outfitted with enough stealth tech to slip through undetected. Inside the station, Karn stood at the heart of a war room illuminated by holographic projections. His massive frame dwarfed the other Shadow Claws around him, his black armor gleaming under the cold light. Reports streamed in from his operatives scattered across the galaxy, detailing the destruction wrought by the human who had become their greatest threat. He's not a soldier, Karn growled, his voice reverberating through the chamber. He's something worse, a predator. But even predators bleed. As the words left his mouth, an alert blared through the station. The lights shifted to crimson, signaling a breach. Karn's claws flexed, his mandibles twitching in anticipation. "He's here," he said, his tone almost amused. "Let him come." Walker had entered the belly of the beast. The corridors of the station were a labyrinth, filled with traps and sentries. But Walker moved with unerring purpose, his every step calculated. The first wave of guards fell without a sound, their bodies crumpling before they could raise the alarm. Walker's modified rifle barked once, twice, each shot finding its mark with lethal precision. The deeper he ventured, the more resistance he faced. The shadow claws were prepared, their ambushes coordinated and relentless. Cloaked figures emerged from the shadows, their blades slicing through the air with inhuman speed. Walker met them head-on, his movements a blur of lethal efficiency. He fought with a ferocity born not of desperation, but of cold, unyielding determination. An explosion rocked the corridor as Walker triggered one of the mines he had planted earlier, the blast tearing through a squad of pursuing operatives. The station shuddered under the impact, its lights flickering. Alarms howled, and the air grew thick with the acrid stench of burning metal. Walker pressed forward, his path marked by the bodies of those who stood in his way. At last, he reached the central chamber. The door slid open with a hiss, revealing Karn waiting in the center, his armor gleaming like obsidian. Around him, a cadre of elite shadow claws stood poised, their weapons drawn. Walker stepped inside, his weapon lowered, but his stance taut with readiness. Karn's mandibles clicked in what might have been a smile. "You've caused quite the disruption, human. Impressive, but you've reached the end of your hunt." Walker's reply was simple, his voice cold. "No, just yours." The battle erupted in an instant, a cacophony of steel, energy, and fury. Walker moved like a phantom, weaving between his foes with impossible grace. His modified rifle barked and hissed, switching between kinetic rounds and energy bursts as he adapted to each attacker's defenses. The elites fought with unparalleled skill, their blades and claws cutting through the air with deadly precision. But Walker was faster, smarter, more ruthless. One by one, the elites fell, their bodies crumpling under the onslaught. Walker's armor bore scorch marks and cuts, but his resolve never wavered. Finally, only Karn remained, his massive form towering over the carnage. The two combatants circled each other, the air between them crackling with tension. Karn struck first, his blade a blur of motion aimed at Walker's chest. Walker sidestepped, his counterstrike a fluid arc that sent sparks flying as it clashed against Karn's armor. The duel was ferocious, every movement a testament to their mastery of combat. Karn's strength was overwhelming, each strike a hammer blow that sent shock waves through the chamber. But Walker fought with precision, exploiting every opening, every hesitation. He was a predator, relentless and unyielding. The turning point came when Walker feinted a retreat, drawing Karn into overextending. In that moment, Walker struck with devastating speed, driving the alien blade into a joint in Karn's armor. The warlord roared in pain, his massive body staggering. Walker pressed the advantage, his strikes relentless, his focus absolute. With a final, bone-shattering blow, Karn fell to his knees. Walker stood over him, his weapon poised for the killing strike. "You underestimated us," Walker said, his voice low. "That was your first mistake." Karn's mandibles twitched, a faint laugh escaping him. "And your mistake is thinking the council will stop. You'll never be free of us." Walker's response was a single, lethal strike that ended Karn's life. The warlord's massive body crumpled to the floor, the chamber falling silent. Walker stepped back, his breathing steady despite the toll of the battle. He activated the station's terminal, broadcasting a message across the Galactic Council's secure channels. His face, bloodied but resolute, filled their screens. "This is over," he said. "Earth is not yours to conquer. Send another assassin, and I will come for you. All of you." The transmission ended, leaving the council chambers in stunned silence. Walker set the station's core to overload, its destruction ensuring the Shadow Claws could never regroup. As the timer ticked down, he boarded his stolen ship, the station structure already groaning under the strain. The ship shot into the void as the explosion consumed the base, a brilliant flash against the darkness of space. Walker sat in the cockpit, his gaze distant. The fight was far from over, but he had delivered a message the galaxy would not forget. The Baba Yaga had declared war, and he would see it through to the end. The vast expanse of space stretched endlessly, quiet now in the wake of the Shadow Claws' annihilation. The debris of their station floated in the void, a silent monument to their defeat. Inside his commandeered ship, Johnny Walker sat in the cockpit, watching as the shattered remnants of his enemies drifted into the abyss. His hands rested lightly on the controls, his expression unreadable. The mission was complete, but his war was far from over. The Galactic Council received his message with a mixture of shock and fury. In their hidden chambers, the leaders of the most advanced civilizations debated their next move. Their pride had been wounded, their agents defeated by a single human. But fear tempered their anger. The footage of Walker's rampage through the Shadow Claw base was already spreading through the galactic networks, a symbol of humanity's resilience and a warning to those who underestimated them. "He's a rogue agent," one council member hissed, their bioluminescent tendrils glowing with agitation. "An anomaly. The humans cannot possibly sustain such defiance." "Perhaps," another murmured, their multifaceted eyes gleaming. "But even anomalies can inspire revolutions. We must proceed with caution." The Council's indecision gave humanity a brief respite. On Earth, General Marcus Steele stood in the command center, his gaze fixed on the live feed of Walker's ship returning to orbit. Around him, the room buzzed with cautious optimism. Reports of Walker's victory had ignited a surge of morale, a rallying cry for a species that had often been seen as the underdog of the galaxy. "Sir," Lieutenant Cole said, his voice breaking Steele's thoughts. "Walker's requesting immediate clearance to land. No debriefing team, no protocols." Steele nodded. "Let him through. He's earned it." The landing platform was deserted when Walker's ship touched down, its engines hissing softly as they powered down. The ramp lowered, and Walker emerged, his silhouette framed by the stark light of the setting sun. His steps were measured, his figure bearing the weight of countless battles. Steele stood waiting, his arms crossed. He approached as Walker descended, his expression a mixture of gratitude and concern. "You did it," Steele said simply. Walker gave a faint nod, his eyes scanning the horizon. "For now." Steele studied him for a moment, noting the weariness etched into his features. "The Council will hesitate after this. They'll think twice before sending another strike force." "They'll regroup," Walker replied, his tone flat. "They always do. But next time, they'll send more than assassins. They'll come in force, with fleets and armies." Steele sighed, the weight of Walker's words settling heavily on his shoulders. "Then we'll be ready." Walker's gaze shifted, his sharp eyes meeting Steele's. "They're not just afraid of us. They're afraid of what we might become. If we let them dictate the terms, we've already lost." Steele nodded slowly, understanding the unspoken challenge. Humanity couldn't afford to be reactive. They needed to seize the initiative, to demonstrate that Earth wasn't a prize to be claimed, but a power to be reckoned with. Days later, Walker stood on the edge of a secluded cliff overlooking a vast forest. The wind carried the scent of pine and the faint rustle of leaves, a stark contrast to the sterile emptiness of space. In his hands, he held the same photograph he had kept close through every battle. He traced the edges of the image, his expression softening for a brief moment. A voice broke the silence. "You've become a symbol, you know." Walker turned to see Cole approaching, his posture hesitant. The young officer stopped a few paces away, his gaze respectful. "People are calling you a hero," Cole continued. "The man who saved Earth. They're saying we should strike back, take the fight to the Council." Walker said nothing, his gaze returning to the horizon. Cole shifted uncomfortably. What are you going to do now? Walker exhaled slowly, the weight of the question settling over him. The same thing I've always done, he said finally. Finish what I started. Cole frowned. You've already done enough. No one would blame you if you stepped away. Walker turned, his eyes piercing. It's not about blame. It's about making sure they understand. As long as the council thinks they can control us, no one's safe. The determination in his voice left no room for argument. Cole nodded, his respect for the man growing. In the days that followed, humanity began to prepare for the inevitable retaliation. New alliances were forged with other species who had suffered under the Council's dominion. Earth's engineers worked tirelessly, reverse engineering the technology Walker had salvaged from his missions to bolster their defenses. And Walker disappeared once more. Rumors spread of his movements. Some said he was training in isolation, preparing for the next battle. Others claimed he was hunting down the remnants of the Shadow Claws, ensuring no loose ends remained. Wherever he went, his name continued to echo across the galaxy, a legend of vengeance and defiance, a symbol of what humanity could achieve. The Galactic Council watched with unease, their once absolute control shaken. For the first time in centuries, they faced a threat they couldn't quantify or predict. Walker had not just defeated their assassins, he had exposed their vulnerability, proving that even the most powerful could fall. And in the shadows of the galaxy, Walker continued his work, his resolve unshaken. He had become more than a man. He was a reckoning, a force that would not rest until humanity's place among the stars was secure. For Johnny Walker, the fight was never about glory or recognition. It was about survival, about protecting what little remained of the life he had once known. And as the stars stretched endlessly before him, he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He would not stop until the galaxy learned the one truth it could no longer ignore. You don't hunt humanity. You survive it.